You said, and by the way, I put the word bullshit in there, even though you didn't say bullshit in this, but you said parasite cleanses, adrenal fatigue, and powdered green supplements like AG1 are pseudoscience bullshit. I plugged that in there for you.
I would agree with, I concur with bullshit. Correct. I stand by that.
Considering you're, in my opinion, one of the nation's leading cardiologists, I want to hear why. So let's go through each one individually, starting with AG1. Why is it bullshit?
So I would say, so on the spectrum of things in pseudoscience, and this is actually like a rubric people can use. It's almost like you don't need 8 different rubrics to evaluate a pseudoscience. You can kind of, one of the biggest tools, I think, is looking through everything from a critical lens and saying, okay, can I apply this same kind of framework for everything that's confusing? Because there's always going to be a headline for something. And you're always going to find a study that's on PubMed, maybe in a mouse, maybe in a human, that shows what you think it should show that, and maybe it doesn't fit with scientific consensus. So with regards to AG1, when it comes to benefits versus risks of something, this is something you and I have discussed, how that's a constant evaluator in my mind when I'm having discussions with patients or with public health. So what are the benefits of having a something like a powdered greens of any kind? There's so many different brands, and we know that even when we wrote our clinical practice statement for the American Society of Preventive Cardiology on nutrition and cardiovascular disease prevention, that if supplements were so powerful and so impactful, that would make our job a lot easier, right? Mm-hmm. But we actually know that the health benefits that come from eating greens, eating fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, this is not just from the individual extracted contents. It's not just from the fiber itself. It's not just from the polyphenols itself. It's from the entire package. And so we know that when you're supplementing it, it doesn't translate into those hard outcomes, that reduction in cancer risk reduction, cardiovascular disease reduction, and all these things. So in general, what we say about things like powdered greens is just eat the food, save your money, eat the fruits and vegetables, and you don't need to buy it in that form. It's a little less sexy, right? When I tell patients, you can buy frozen fruits and vegetables or canned. There's the same nutrient density in them. You can go to Costco. You don't need to buy organic. These are things that are true based on science, but can sometimes be hard to hear because of how much of the misinformation there is on social media. And sometimes when things are packaged and marketed in a certain way, it's appealing. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the actual truth is cheaper, but also less fancy.
AG1 and really any powdered green, it seems to me like a very overpriced, outrageously expensive, shitty multivitamin. Right? Whereas, number one, if you want to take a multivitamin, you could probably get a better one for way less expensive.
Sure, yes.
And from what it sounds like you're saying is the benefits, like they're highlighting all the vitamins, the minerals, all that you get within the packaging.
Right.
But what you're saying is that's not what gives fruits, vegetables, food the benefit. It's not just the micronutrients. It's the whole package.
It's the whole package. Same thing with fiber supplements. That's why we say when we want you to increase fiber in your diet, it's from foods, not from supplements. And that's because it's probably twofold. One is because it's not just the fiber itself, or it's not just the vitamin C itself. I mean, how many vitamins have been studied, right? Mm-hmm. Outside of deficiency, this is something I've been quoted on social media saying a lot, but I can't find a better phrase for it. But I always say that outside of deficiency or outside of a guideline indicated use for a vitamin, so if you're vitamin D deficient or you live in a certain region, geographic region, or B12, if you're plant-based, or folic acid for women of childbearing age, there's certain guideline indications for vitamin repletion, as well as outside of deficiency. Vitamins and supplements are usually expensive urine at best, and they can cause end organ damage or damage for your kidney, liver, arrhythmia, heart damage at worst. And so that's why it's the reason why it's when we look at things like green powders, or if you look at fiber when it's in a supplement form, the reason why it doesn't translate to the same clinical outcomes as the food is because there is no placebo when it comes to nutrition science, because we all eat, right? But when you look at the hard outcome trials, so things that matter, like reduction in cardiovascular endpoints like heart attack, stroke, cardiovascular disease, or even if you're looking at biomarker data and things like that, when you are eating foods that are high in fiber, of course, they're high in fiber, which helps to lower your cholesterol and can help lower blood pressure. It's also packaged with all these micronutrients and things like that, but it's also the food that it's replacing. And that's where people forget, right? So when you're eating more legumes and greens and fruits and vegetables, these foods have more water content, more volume. They're naturally going to displace something else that may be less beneficial for you. And so it's kind of a twofold. And that's why it really is the actual food that's more beneficial rather than just the individual nutrients themselves.
So tell me, why are parasite cleanses bullshit?
This is so funny. So, when like Instagram really blew up about functional medicine, which is, we can go into that for years about how that's just a marketing term and it's not an actual scientific rubric whatsoever. But when functional medicine really hit the internet waves, and there was all these things about parasite cleanses, I remember thinking, wait a second, in my 10 years of medical training, did I miss this wave of parasites? And so one of my good friends from residency is an infectious disease doctor at Emory. And I had talked to her about it and she was cracking up because she's like, it's all, nonsensical. You talk to any ID doctor, any GI doctor, and they'll tell you, of course, parasites exist, right? So there's true parasite infections. People are traveling abroad and they may be exposed if their water's not clean, all of these things. Those are not treated with a parasite cleanse bought on Instagram. Those are treated with actual medications that are prescription, that are, parasitic.
Including ivermectin, right? That's
yeah, well, it depends. There's for different parasites, different treatments. But, I defer to the infectious disease doctors for that. But I know for sure it's not treated through these quote unquote cleanses. And then I found out something really fascinating. So then I found out from a GI doctor who mentioned to me that, and you know what they do with these parasite cleanses is they actually put a ton of inulin or different kinds of fiber in them so that when you have a bowel movement, you have this stringy bowel movement that looks like you excreted a parasite, but it's just what's in the powder.
They're really duping people to the next level.
Giant circular scam. So yes, if you have a true parasite, you should go see an infectious disease doctor and get a prescription to treat that. And that it's not that doesn't exist. It's just not common enough in my 10 years of medical training. I just happen to not see it. But if you work in, I trained in Philadelphia, but if you work in an area, I've had friends that are, ID docs in New York City that, someone's traveling from abroad and they come in and they have a parasite infection. It's not non-existent, but that is not treated with the parasite cleanses on social media.
Same thing with the detoxes that are promoted. Number one, it's funny when people are like, yeah, I'm detoxing. I'm like, what are you detoxing from? Which toxins?
Right.
But
which toxins? That's a good question.
It's a great question. No one can ever answer. They're always like, I'm getting the toxins out. I'm like, oh, which ones? Mm-hmm. And I've even had this debate with people who sell detoxes because they'd be like, they're like, everyone has so many toxins. Like, which ones are you getting rid of specifically? And they never know. If you there are things that you actually need to go to a doctor for, but you don't buy the solution to if you have a liver issue.
Correct.
You go to your doctor. You don't buy something off of Instagram that makes you have diarrhea.
Correct. And your our inherent detoxers are you have three. You have 2 kidneys and a liver. Mm-hmm. You only need 1 kidney. There's some people born with just 1 kidney. Those do your detox for you. If those that are not working, you need to be seeing a nephrologist or a hepatologist who's a liver specialist or a kidney specialist. So, the detox is another, of course, scam. And so it's unfortunate. And one thing that I think you and I have discussed before that I think is really important to emphasize to your listeners is because sometimes when, as physicians or, people that are in health science having these conversations, it can seem like we're a little demeaning because we're saying, well, duh, it's just a scam. I want to remind everyone that's listening to that the consumer of the misinformation is the victim here because everyone is just looking for health solutions for problems. I have literally been absolutely confused. If it's not within my specialty, I can tell you how many dermatology, skincare scams I could easily fall for. And then I'll message my friend who's a dermatologist and they're like, that's a scam. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to be confused because if it's not in your area of expertise or if you're not in healthcare at all, it can be so confusing. And then there's also authority bias. People with an MD that are affiliated with a big institution are selling you this scam, Mark Hyman. And it's it's that authority bias. They have an MD after their name, and that does not mean they're not predatory. They're still promoting misinformation. I know you had mentioned on your list adrenal fatigue. Mark
That's what we're
Hyman
gonna
is
talk
one
about,
of
yeah.
the biggest pushers of adrenal fatigue. The Endocrine Society had to come out with a statement that says adrenal fatigue is not real. And here's the thing, your symptoms are real.
Yes.
So if you are feeling fatigue and you are feeling tired and you are not sleeping well, you are feeling all these things, those symptoms are real. And there could be an underlying etiology to that we may have a fix for. But someone preying on you with misinformation and selling you a cleanse for it or a pill for it or adrenal support pill is really, to me, the lowest form of low, especially when they're a physician and they should know better, or a scientist. And so, just to make it clear to your listeners that, we joke about how this is so ridiculous, but I totally get where you're coming from and how you landed there, because it is, it's a function of people just looking for health.
I like that you clarified that the symptoms are real, because whenever I discuss this, people often think I'm saying that you're not fatigued, you're not tired, you're not having these. No, I'm I believe you feel all of these negative symptoms going on, but that doesn't make it adrenal fatigue. There could be other underlying issues that need to be addressed, absolutely. But the term adrenal fatigue is not even recognized in the scientific community.
Literally. Endocrine Society literally has a statement, which I implore anyone to read, where they go through the data about how it's not real. And the other issue is that, yes, so sometimes these constitution of vague symptoms can be something else, and it can be something diagnosable. And guess what? This is where uncertainty comes in. Sometimes someone has symptoms that you do a sleep study. They don't have sleep apnea. You check their blood work. Everything looks okay. They still have those symptoms. Those symptoms are still real. This is where I think, physicians need to do better about expressing uncertainty and saying, your symptoms are real, and we will continue this journey to figure out what this is and support you in any way we can, even though we don't know exactly what it is right now. That doesn't mean that the alternative, let me give a name to what you're feeling and make it up and sell you a treatment for it, is the right answer. We just do have to, rather than being dismissive, we have to, explain to patients that there are areas of uncertainty of medicine, and that we will use the best available science that we have to help patients move forward. But we may not always have an answer, but that doesn't mean that this case is closed.